Jon Mutchler here, pastor at the Ferndale Alliance Church, and we have been talking about what to do if you offend somebody, if you offend your brother or sister, and how you handle it. The key verse is Matthew chapter 5 from the Sermon on the Mount, verses 23 and 24. Let me review quickly. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, performing some kind of religious responsibility, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come offer your gift. Apparently here it's clear that reconciliation with a brother or sister that we have wronged or offended is of primary importance for those of us that practice our faith. But the question is, what if we are the one that is offended? We are the offended ones, or would be called the offendee. When you have something against somebody else and you are the object of the offense. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. We are generally offended when somebody does not meet our expectations on how they should behave towards us or behave towards others. They let us down, and so we are offended. And by the way, I am a pastor, and I am in the unmet expectations profession. I've got one of those jobs that it's very difficult to meet people's expectations. Somebody wrote this description of the perfect pastor. It's kind of humorous. It's been around for decades, but if you haven't heard it, I think you'll not only enjoy it, but I think it'll help make my point. What's the perfect pastor? Here goes. The perfect pastor is one who will be able to please everyone in the church and meet the needs of every church members and their expectations, and still have the ideal family. The perfect pastor speaks the truth, stands up for injustice, preaches against sin and vices, but never steps on anybody's toes. The perfect pastor preaches an inspiring sermon every Sunday that makes you cry, laugh, think deeply about everyday life, and unwrap the mysteries of the universe while still managing to get you out the door in under 50 minutes. The perfect pastor works from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, doing everything from sermon preparation, counseling, to sweeping and taking care of the church building, and still helps his kids with their homework, who all get straight A's. The perfect pastor is 36 years old, yet still has 40 years of preaching experience behind him. The perfect pastor has a burning desire to work with the young people, the teenagers, and yet spends all his time with the senior citizens. The perfect pastor smiles and has a keen sense of humor and warmth, all the while keeping a straight and reverent face that shows serious dedication to all his tasks. The perfect pastor makes 15 calls a day on church members, spends every free moment evangelizing non-members, and is always found in the church office when needed. And finally, the perfect pastor has perfectly behaved children and a spouse who looks stunning any time of the day. The main point is that we are offended and hurt when people don't meet our expectations. Not just pastors, people in any significant realm of our lives, co-workers, employers, bosses, family members, or church members. And here's the key. We have to be careful when we expect more from others than we demand from ourselves. That's usually the problem. We sometimes expect more from other people in terms of how they live their lives and their behavior and their actions and their words than we expect from ourselves. How often do we get angry with somebody who cuts us off while driving, but our driving patterns aren't necessarily any better than anyone else? I guess we call that hypocrisy. So I would like to talk to those of you that find yourselves easily offended, easily bothered, slighted, let down, disappointed, hurt, can I say this, thin-skinned, touchy, hypersensitive. Welcome to the real world, because offenses will come, and you are just especially noticeable of them. And I want to speak to those of you that regularly and often feel offended by others. And I want to tell you something that you probably already know in your heart. Very likely you are a person of low self-esteem. You have been hurt genuinely by others, put down, abused, broken, and wronged, which is why your offense radar is up. It's kind of a natural a sense of self-preservation. Your natural and habitual tendency is to think that when you are made uncomfortable by somebody's comments or remarks or manners or actions, that they are doing it intentionally to hurt you. You're hardwired after years of practice, and again, genuine offenses in your life from the past. You're generally hardwired to see offenses as being directed specifically toward you. It's just rather automatic. And though it may be true, and may be true that at times people are offending you, all too often they're not. And it's simply a matter of misunderstanding and perspective. And the important point is that when we embrace so personally every offense that comes our way, we do great damage to ourselves, to our relationships, and sometimes to others. And what we need to learn is grace and forgiveness and respect, and learn to give people the benefit of the doubt when they say things that bother us. And when you think they are significant, that something should be said, learn to speak up for yourself when offended, when wrong. But always, especially initially, use what is called tentative language. Language that gives people room to maneuver and room to explain and room to be able to not feel like they're backed into a corner where it becomes fight or flight. Tentative language goes like this. When you might say to somebody, and again, this takes some courage, but it's so important, and 9 times out of 10, it's rather redeeming and helpful. You say to somebody, you know, Joe, when you said X to me, it came across as whatever, angry or mean-spirited, or perhaps I misunderstood or misheard what you said to me, but when you said the following, it troubled me, it bothered me. Could you explain this to me better? It's gracious, tentative language. It's direct. It's meant to give them opportunity to explain themselves and even to apologize without backing people into a corner. Just think about how you like to be spoken to when somebody's troubled by something you've done. You don't want people to speak harshly at you, or when they're angry, or when they're ready to clobber you. You want them to speak to you graciously with a sense of forgiveness and a sense of openness, and that's how you ought to speak to other people. Sometimes it indeed is hard to do, but you will be surprised, pleasantly surprised, at how often we simply misunderstood something. We ascribed meaning to some words that were never intended by the author. Somebody might say something awkwardly or clumsy in a clumsy way, or in a bad or a tired moment. And when you speak to them about what your perception was and allow them to explain it, they will very often thank you. They've learned something, you've learned something, and you've gained or retained a friendship. It's easy to be offended. It just is. It doesn't take any effort. It's harder, but better and classier to be gracious and handle offenses in a mature, direct, and thoughtful way. The last thing I would like to talk about is what to do with those that seem to want to be offended or want to act offended. People that seem to bask in being a victim of offense. And this seems to happen more so online. Someone makes a comment in a social media thread, And then I would call them the thought Nazis come out. And somebody might express a generally held conviction and view. And somebody comes along and says, well, this is what you meant. And they cast what they said as misogynistic or racist or bigoted, sexist or intolerant, or even worse. Awful things that people are attacked for online. Someone was just expressing a heartfelt opinion. And maybe they said it in a clumsy way, perhaps. They could have said it better. But they get clobbered by the thought Nazis out there. And it seems like there are a number of them that want to be offended. It empowers them. It even energizes them, and they seem to bask in it. It doesn't take long to pick up on people like that. By the way, for me, and I do a lot of online posting, I ignore them. I won't engage with people like that generally. And in my personal life, I try not to be around people like that. People who want to be offended, so that you know that you simply cannot speak to them. You can't find common ground with people like that. They simply want to be in a battle all the time. And I'm not interested in that. I think most people aren't as well. I also would like to comment on those that use social media to blast and criticize an entire organization based on one unfortunate interaction. We see this. Somebody goes to a store or some kind of agency or place, and they have a negative experience, say from a cashier or a teller or a waitress, and so they rip the entire establishment. You know, I'm going to be honest with you, I hate that. I do not respect people who do things like that. The classic thing to do is to talk to the person that treated you poorly right then and there. Say, you know, I don't appreciate that. I don't think that's the right way to handle it. And if you have a stronger feeling about it, go to the manager. Write a note to the company. Fine. But when we post things on social media, you're attacking a business that may well be employing some of your neighbors. Some of your family members might work there as well. So I don't understand that. Somehow people think it's cathartic to do that. I get that. But I don't think it's good. I think it's toxic, and I don't think it's helpful. So if you're offended by something that somebody does, your first responsibility is to forgive and forget and move on, or just speak to that person, not broadcast it to the entire world. That's just ugly. It's just ugly. Let's take a moment to talk about the offense of the day, which is either the wearing or not wearing of face coverings. Everybody has a strong opinion on this. Everybody has their experts. Everybody has their favorite YouTube, doctor, and website to support their position. I appreciate that. But do we really want to make 2020, the year 2020, the year of the battle over face masks? I hope not. I trust and I believe we are simply gracious and respectful and thoughtful about it. Being respectful of who we are around and what their concerns and values are. And you know, if you're a person that feels really strongly that people ought to be wearing face masks and somebody doesn't, absolutely you're welcome to say something to them. Would you please put on your face mask? You have every right to say that. But I don't think you have the right to shame and publicize and videotape and try to create a fight. I think that's the greater offense. Say something, say it once, say it thoughtfully and respectfully, and you'll probably get the result that you want. Okay? So let's be gracious. Let's not try to cause offense. And if we are offended, if you are offended, respond in a way that does not create a bigger offense. Next time we get together in the next couple of days, we're going to talk about another realm of offense. It's called the professional weaker brother. Again, the professional weaker brother, something that happens more in religious communities in dealing with this issue of offending and being offended. Thank you for watching today. Have a great week.